Hi guys, today's notes are on graphing sine and cosine, and we're going to be adding in vertical translations today. Translations, remember, are the same as shifting up and down, right? So let's just assume that for right now we have c plus cosine theta and c plus sine theta. We're going to take a moment and use our graphing calculator to sort of get comfortable with graphing, but also just know like how can we check our answers. So the first thing you want to do is know that these 4 buttons at the very top, these 5 buttons, those are your graphing function buttons. Okay, so we're going to go and set up our window and make sure that we match these. Now, x min means our smallest x value, so I'll do -90 for now. X max, we want 360. And our scale is what are we counting by, right? So let's do 45 for now. And then we'll do y min as -5, 3, and 1. Now you can change these values to reflect whatever graph you're checking, right? So if you're doing your homework and your distance between critical points, that's your scale. You can have it count by whatever your distance between critical points is. X max can be your last point of the 8 sections in your graph, and x min can just go a little bit negative to give yourself some cushion. Well, right now there's nothing, right? But what we'll do is go to y equals, okay, in the top left, and we're going to graph these one by one. So we're going to graph and then, type it in and then hit graph, type it in, hit graph, just so we can see each new graph show up. So let's do cosine, and x t theta, this is your variable right here, right? So next to alpha. And then we'll hit graph. You never have to close the parentheses at the end of your equation. And you see what happens, right? Which reflects what we know. It starts at 1, it goes down, down, right? And it continues up. So then let's do our next one. We'll do 2 plus, cosine of x. You'll notice that the entire graph has shifted up. Excuse me, sorry about that. And then this one I wanted y3. We're gonna not write over it, but we'll go to y3 and we'll have -3 plus cosine x. Now hopefully you know that the negative at the front needs to be the negative button, not the minus button, okay? And let's watch that. And that's a translation or vertical translation down. So what happens as c increases? Well, as c increases and gets bigger, it translates or shifts up. And as c decreases, it translates or shifts down. Okay. So c is just another way to write k, which we know is the vertical translation. Now you can add k at the end or add c at the beginning, right? Like these numbers don't matter because I can write 2 plus cosine, and that's the same as cosine plus 2. Oh, I should put x, sorry. Right? So these two things are the same. They're just written in a different order, and it doesn't matter which one it is. So let's take a moment, and we're going to neatly graph these 2 cycles for each graph. We're going to mark the scales on the axes. So let's begin. Sine graph usually, and I should write parent. Okay, so the sine parent graph starts at 0, 0. Now we know that we're going to shift up 5 now, right? So we're going to go up 5. So that means instead of being at y equals 0, which we've been at the last few days, we're now going to be at y equals 5. Great. And I've picked a number where it won't fit perfectly. It's okay. So let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I know I said before that you don't need to mark in your dotted lines, but life is going to be a lot better if you do that now. So I'm going to put these lines in. I'm running out of space here. I'm going to move my graphing calculator because I won't need that anymore. And we know now that our amplitude is 5. Oh, wow. Wow, teacher fail. We did not, our amplitude is not 5. It's not just the number in front, sorry, it's a number in front of sine. So this is my A, and this is my K or C, however you want to call it, right? So now my amplitude is 3. Ooh, that would have been bad. And what that means is from 5 as my middle or midline. Okay, I'm going to mark it just so that we don't get confused. We're going to go up 5 and down 5. So this is going to be 5 plus 3 and 5 minus 3, which will give us 8 and 2. Now 8 doesn't fit on my graph, so I'm sorry, I'm going to draw my line up here. Just one above. And then down 4, 3, 2. You see how it's not centered around 0 anymore? So like these lines will now help us graph. Okay. We'll also mark every 3, just like we did before, so that we can get a full 8 pieces. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 8 pieces will give us 2 full cycles. And the period, don't forget, is 360 divided by the absolute value of b. Okay, because we're always going to have the period be a positive number. So b is 1 right now. So 360 divided by 1 is just 360 degrees. I should put my degrees in because we've talked about how radians are going to be different. And our distance between critical points is our period divided by 4. That's going to be 90 degrees. Okay, so I'm going to count. So this 90 degrees, distance between critical points, is what I'm going to count by here. Hopefully this looks like really familiar so far. This will be 270, 360. The 4th piece should always match your period. Okay, I'm going to be lazy and not fill those in, but you could easily fill them in if you were asked to do so. So now let's begin. We know sine graph starts at, maybe instead of writing 0, 0, we can say the midline. Okay, so maybe that would be a better use of it. We'll remember midline and maximum instead of like midline as 0, 0. So our midline is at 0, 0. I'm going to start here at 5, up to 8. Now I did have someone ask, like, how do we know if we're going up or down? That's such a great question. Right now we're always going up because our a value is positive. If a were negative, then we would go down. Okay, so we're going up, come back to the middle, down to minimum, and back to middle. So let me just graph my first one to make sure that my 4 pieces, right, and I can just draw that line to show that that's my first piece or first period, and make sure that when you finish your 8 pieces, you've landed in the same spot. So far so good? Show that the graph continues, and now we can draw or write in our critical points. So we're counting by 90 degrees for x's. Okay, remember, oops, sorry. This is your period for right now, right? And then we're going to start at the midline, which was 5, go up to 8, go back to 5, go down to 2, and then come back to 5. Okay. So only difference now is that we have to shift before we begin. Okay, let's keep going. So instead of writing like cosine starts at 0, a, maybe what we can do is we are going to start at the max or the min, okay, of cosine. And it depends on if we are like have a positive or negative a, right? So max is if you have a positive a, and min is if you have a negative a. Our sinusoidal axis is what we're adding to our cosine or subtracting to our cosine. So that's this. Y equals -3. It's a shift down. Okay. So let's draw in our -3. Okay, that's our midline. I'm going to label it just so that we don't get confused. Amplitude is 1. So that means our max is going to be -3 plus 1 at -2, and -3 minus 1 at -4. Okay, so really small graphs. I'm actually going to be consistent here. So since we're going up and down one box, I'm still going to do this just so that you guys can see. It'll never go above or below. That's our max. And here's our min. Well, since our max, our A value is positive, right? A equals 1. Then we are going to start at the top, at our maximum. What are we going to count by? 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. We're going to count by 360 divided by 2, because that's B. Oh, sorry. Let's write 2, which is 180 degrees. Well, 180 divided by 4 is, let me just make sure. I always feel like I'm going to make a mistake. I think that's 45, right? Yep. So I'll count by 45s now. I know my fourth one should be 180. This will be 135. Okay. So I'm going to start at the max, come down to the middle, down, middle again, up. And I know that I made it work because my fourth piece comes back to the same place. And then just keep going and repeat the pattern. Please make sure that you always have 2 cycles. It just shows us that you know where things are and that it repeats again. Okay? Make sure that your arrows don't go past the maximum or the minimum, right? And they start to curve back down. And you can write your critical points now of 0. We're counting by 45s because of our distance between critical points. Oops, 180, not 360. Okay, so our midline, no, we started our max. So -2 down to -3 in the middle, all the way to -4 down, back to our midline at -3, and then up to our max. Okay. Okay, so what do we do if the numbers are bigger? Like 50 and 100 in sine. So, oops. I need to switch these, sorry. So this is obviously not a cosine graph, this is a sine graph. We're going to start at the midline, or the sinusoidal axis. And our sinusoidal axis for us is 50. Our amplitude is 100, right, because that's my A value here. And B is 1, so there's no stretch or shrink horizontally, which means my period is 360. That means divide by 4 equals to 90 again, which is degrees. Well, if my amplitude is 100 but my midline is 50, that means I'm going to have to go above and below from 50 plus 100 and 50 minus 100. Okay, and the reason I put these all together before drawing my midline is because now I need to figure out what my scale is going to be. Okay, so if I'm going to need to count from -50 to 150, let's see, maybe I can do 50 here. Let's see if it works. That means this is 100, and then we fit 150 at the top. This is 0, and then -50 here. Right, so I have to figure out what I'm going to count by to make it fit. So our max line is at 150. our midline is at 50. And our minimum is at negative 50. Okay. I think you guys can graph your own points at this moment, right? So like we're going to count by 90. Take a moment and put all these numbers together. I think I'm going to skip this next part, right? So fill in your graph, fill in your critical points. Okay. So let's do this one now. And I just want to set up our numbers just to see, because we do have a fraction. Okay, we did talk fractions last week or last lesson, but I want to make sure you guys still understand it. So cosine starts at our max or our min. Since a is positive, we're going to start at max. Our sinusoidal axis is what we're adding. So it's y equals 100. Amplitude is the number in front of cosine, like right in front that we're multiplying by. So that's 200. So our max is 100 plus 200, right? Because we're going to start in the middle and go up. So a total of 300. And then we're going to start in the middle and go down. So we need to go from negative 100 up to 300, which means I need 4 pieces. So I think I can use the same scale here, but just double these to negative 100 and positive 300, right? So let's see. This will be 100, which is our midline. Well, let's check. This is 200 and 300. And then we'll have negative 100 here. Okay. Actually, I should just have you guys do the graph, because at this point, the numbers are what's important, right? Here. My period, if b is 2 over 3, then I'm going to do 360 times 1 over b, which is the reciprocal, right? Let's rewrite it. 360 divided by b is the same as 360 times 1 over b. And we've been practicing like 1 over a lot, so we know 1 over is just our reciprocal, which means instead of timesing by 2 over 3, I can times 3 over 2. Well, 360, I'm going to divide first, because I know half of 360 is 180, then 180 times 3 is 540. Now, if you didn't know how to do that in your head, that's fine. That's what your graphing calculator is for. 360 times 3 divided by 2. Okay? So then we're going to take 540 degrees divided by 4, which is 135, and you guys can count by that now. Okay? So I would say just complete this to make sure you've got the graph, but that is all our notes for today.